Hi, and welcome to What's New in Aerospace. I'm Marty Kelsey. I host a show here at the National Air and Space Museum called STEM in 30 for middle school science students. And I cannot tell you guys how excited I am to introduce our guests today. They were crewmates on Expedition 42 and 43. Today we have Samantha Cristoferetti, who spent 200 days in space, becoming the longest single space flight by a female, correct? And we have Terry Virts, who is the pilot of STS-130 and the commander of Expedition 43 on the International Space Station. Let's give them a round of applause to welcome them. So I want to start off with one of the big, important questions, and that is, Samantha, how is the espresso on the International Space Station?
Wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all. It was a great improvement over the instant coffee I had been drinking for almost 6 months. And it was a delivery from home, so it was very nice and very appreciated. I do have to say that Terry was with me as well for 200 days on the space station.
Well, and Terry, you spent 212 days in space with the shuttle and the station, correct? Now, you're a big baseball fan. I am. And I loved the pictures you put on Twitter of all the stadiums on opening day. Were you able to catch any of the games while you were in space?
We did. That was actually a lot of fun to try and get all the baseball stadiums around the country. The ones on the coast were easy to find, but the ones in the middle of the country were a little bit tougher. They don't stand out quite as well. But the ground was able to link up spring training games, and once the season started, baseball games, and that was fun to stay connected with Earth and my favorite sport.
Awesome. Now, you guys were both very active on social media while you were in space. How important is it to connect with people on Earth when you're up in space?
It's super important. We can do events like this, which are great to be live in person talking to folks, but obviously that's limited, and social media goes around the globe. And I had lots of followers in India and the Philippines, and Turkey was one of the most popular countries following Samantha, and had many more. And so we were able to reach literally the whole Earth through that, and that was a lot of fun to do that.
Okay. And so how about you? You enjoy that conversation back to Earth when you're in space?
Yeah, it wasn't, unfortunately, as much as I would have liked a conversation, because we do have access to the internet from space, but it's not so easy to use it, and it's not so fast as it is from the ground. And so in the end, I shared a lot. I didn't really have the chance to maybe answer as many questions as I would have liked and stuff like that. But yes, I went into the spaceflight with a commitment to share as much as possible. In fact, I had started a lot earlier. I started writing a logbook about 500 days before launch, so a year and a half almost before we launched, in which I detailed all the aspects of training. And so, and then when I went to space, I continued to do that. So it's not only the pictures out there, but I actually try to tell the story, and it's all archived, it's all on the internet. So if you're ever curious what it is to train for the International Space Station, or what daily activities people do up there, it's on the internet, you can find it.
Now, the International Space Station is a huge cooperation from many, many countries. Why should the average person on the street care about what's going on up in the space on the space station?
One of the things we say is that we're off the planet for the planet, and the mission of the space station is multifaceted, but the most important aspect of what we do is science. And there's a lot of science experiments. One of the most important and fun ones that we did was working on new medicines with some drug companies that launched experiments. There's also biology, physics, material science, astronomy, and cosmology. So basically any discipline of science, they have an experiment on board the space station. So a lot of what we do is applied science that can be applied to problems that we have here on Earth.
Okay. Now, I've always wanted to know this. Is there a unique smell when you go onto the space station for the first time?
Actually, the space station has a very neutral smell. The filters work very well, so I expected a little bit of a bad smell. You know, a lot of people living in cramped quarters for a long time, but the ventilation system and the filtering systems are great. What we tend to call the space smell, which is not really the smell of space, but when a new vehicle comes up and docks, and when you open the hatch, I remember Terry calling me over and saying, "Hey, go and smell, you know, feel the smell of space." And it's really I guess it's the metal that's been exposed, and the external material of that vehicle that's been exposed to outer space. So it's kind of cool, because when a vehicle comes and there's this part of it where the hatch is, which is in outer space in vacuum for a long time, and then it's docked or berthed to the space station, and it makes a solid connection, and then you open both hatches, but you have this part which now it's inside, it's part of your home, but a few hours earlier was in space, and so it's probably some kind of chemical reaction that goes on, and off-gassing. I'm not exactly sure, but it smells. It's bad. I mean, it's a mix of burnt and foul and food gone bad, and it's terrible. But anyway, it goes away very quickly.
So when those resupplies came up, what was the best thing that they sent?
I think fresh fruit. That's something that the food there is actually pretty good, but it's all packaged and freeze-dried and dehydrated. So the fresh fruit, we got some apples and carrots and oranges, and that's always everybody's favorite, because we hadn't had that smell in a long time, and it just tastes good. So that was fun.
Was fruit one of the things that you missed most from Earth, or was there something else?
Shower,
yeah. It was weird taking a shower for the first time. It was kind of painful. It felt like someone was jabbing you with a lot of little needles to feel the water. But yeah, the fruit and not only fruit, but just any kind of fresh fruit, food, or bread. Also, there's not bread in space. We don't have bread there. We have tortillas, but that's not bread. So that was another thing I missed.
Okay. So is there anything from the space station that you miss having here on Earth?
The view. And weightlessness. There's all this gravity down here on Earth, and it was a lot of fun to float. There's nothing like it on Earth, and so that's just a really unique, almost alien thing that we do in space, and you have to learn how to do it. It takes a few weeks before you get really good at it, and that's a lot of fun.
Did you crash into anything the first couple days?
We didn't have any big bruises or scrapes, I don't think. Sometimes that happens. We were actually pretty safe. Sort of, yeah.
What was your favorite thing on Earth to look at as you were flying over?
I don't think there's one favorite thing. There's too many. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Earth is amazing, and there's no way that you can pick like one place. It's like, I guess it depends how you feel that day, but there's a lot of amazing places. The Caribbean and Patagonia was one place I like to fly over. Northern Africa with this amazing red, and Australia, the Himalayas, and then of course I'm Italian, so I love flying over Italy and over Europe as a whole. I mean, Europe is so tiny. I mean, you really realize up there how smaller countries are over in Europe, and so you actually breeze over Europe in like 10 minutes, and it's like, oh, that was it.
Were you able to see your hometowns?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You're from Baltimore, correct?
Born in Baltimore and raised in PG in Howard County.
Okay, awesome. Well, here in a few minutes, we're going to take a few questions before they get into their full-on presentation. So if you've got a question, you can come on over here to the microphone, and we'll be ready for those here in just a minute. You can see Myra in the back, and she has some forms for you to fill out if you want to ask a question. What was the most surprising thing about being on the space station?
That's a great question. There's a lot of surprising things. Of course, like I talked about, the view of the Earth, but I think the learning process of how to live in space, because it's not Earth, there's no gravity, you're floating. Not only are you floating, but everything like this would be floating around, and so just the ability to do basic things like get dressed in the morning. You have to organize your clothes in a certain way. Everything has to have Velcro stuck to a wall or it's going to float away. And so the process of learning how to live in space and not be an Earthling anymore, be a spaceman. That was really interesting for me.
How about you?
Yeah, very much that, I have to say. And also, I guess how much I enjoyed little things that I knew would be fun, but flying. It's not so much floating, but it's really flying. I mean, you're flying for 200 days all day, and I don't know. I used to dream a lot about flying when I was, especially growing up, but I had those dreams when I was actually flying, not flying on an airplane, but really flying, like in space, and all of a sudden I could do this for real, and how much I enjoyed that kind of surprised me. I mean, it's such an enjoyable feeling.
Do you dream in weightlessness when you're in space?
I think I dreamt less in space than I do now. Yeah, it was interesting. People ask that all the time, and I think we were so tired to work. There was a pretty busy place. I had some, but not that many. And it was usually of Earth and like weather, rain or wind, things like that you don't have in space. And so just trying to remember Earth. I got to a point where I couldn't remember what it was like to be in gravity. Like I was trying to think, what is it like to stand or to sit, or, you know, I had forgotten what that felt like.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a question.
I have two questions actually. One is really short. The first one is, do you get claustrophobic being up there for so long? I feel like you seem to
You know,
get on ground.
I don't think we did. I didn't feel that. The place to be claustrophobic would have been in the Soyuz capsule. The launch and landing, that is really small. And there's a seat over here. You can kind of see how cramped that is. And so the claustrophobic, that would be the time that you would feel that would be when you're in the spacesuit for launch and landing. Thankfully, we're only there for a few hours, but you kind of do need to use your mind over matter and go, all right, I'm going to sit here, everything's fine, and I'll be out of this in not too long. But it's more cabin fever, I think, that some astronauts have talked about, because the station is big, you're not cramped at all, but it's like a 747, so it's a big area, but you can never leave, you know. And even if you do a spacewalk, you're still holding on to the station, and that's only a few hours out of the 6 months. So I think the cabin fever is a bigger issue than claustrophobia. Thankfully, I never really felt that way. I was always happy, but I could see how that could happen, though.
You know, as a student, I have lived in a lot more cramped quarters than the space station pavement.
But they let you out before 200 days elapsed, though. That was the difference.
Yeah, that's true.
My second question is, going up in space is kind of like a lifetime achievement pinnacle. Did you feel a letdown when you come back down? I mean, you're both pretty young. Do you feel like, oh, I achieved this big thing? Like, what do you do now?
Every astronaut's favorite mission is their next one. So, and you know, the old veterans that have 5 space flights, they would rather be a rookie with 1 in front of them than with 5 behind them. So I think Samantha and I would both like to fly again, and we're going to enjoy Earth. I haven't really had time to be let down yet. We've had a pretty busy few months, but there's nothing like flying in space. And so you kind of have to mentally prepare yourself that there's lots of wonderful things on Earth, and that your people and family and friends are here. But you know, space is just unique. It's like winning the World Series. You know, Cal Ripken, I'm a baseball fan from the Orioles, won the World Series when he was a rookie and played baseball for another 20 years and never went back again. So there's just some things in life that are awesome, and when they happen, you need to enjoy them and realize you may never have a chance to do it again. Hopefully we will, but we had a great experience.
And I mean, being on the space station for 200 days is a good teacher, I think, for the times to come when you come back, because you start out with an incredible peak experience, which is the launch and arriving to the space station, and the first few days where it's an amazing experience, everything's exhilarating, but then you're up there for 200 days. So there are some things that become routine. I mean, we're human beings, everything becomes routine after a while, but you still enjoy it. So it's not about the peak experience anymore. It's just about being happy every day and like what you do every day. You know, not as a peak, but just as a baseline of being content with what you do. And I think we tend nowadays to select astronauts that have a personality that can live with that. You know, we're not necessarily people who want to race to the top of a mountain every single day. You know, it's really about enjoying what comes every day, whether it's a peak experience or whether it's routine.
Thank you.
We have another question?
So going up into space and leaving an environment of gravity, I know there are lots of concerns with like bone density, muscle strength, all of that stuff. What types of things do you guys do up there? Like, is there a certain exercise regimen you follow? What type? Is there certain things that you eat to keep up bone density or anything like that? And then, sorry, asking a lot of things, but also, is there some kind of gravity compensation, like inertial with spinning or something like that on the space station? And then, yeah.
Well, that's a good question. A big effect of weightlessness is that you don't use your bones and your muscles. Like right now, everybody in here is using muscles, and their bones are getting exercised just by fighting against gravity, and you don't get that when you're in space. And that's a big concern of ours, and so they've developed a very good protocol of exercise We have basically a weightlifting machine that allows you to do bench press and squats and deadlifts, and a treadmill and a bicycle. And in combination, we come back in pretty good shape. There is a little bit of bone loss here and there, but overall, I didn't lose any bone density as an entire body goes. And so the space station, I think one of the biggest success stories that it's had is that we've proven and shown that people can go into space for a long period of time and thrive and work and then come back to Earth in pretty good shape. It's not perfect. There's ways we can improve that, but that's a big question that's been answered, I think, to go further in places like Mars and beyond in the solar system. The station has shown that that's possible. And there is no centrifuge, the second part of your question. Like in the movie 2001, so many parts of that movie have come true, and it's amazing how visionary Arthur Clarke was. But the one thing, the space station was rotating, and so there was gravity. And in a lot of Hollywood movies, it's expensive to film a movie where they have to float all the time. So there's always they just make gravity happen. It saves on the production costs. And so we don't have an gravity machine, and there's no real centrifuge for people. We have small centrifuges for science experiments, but not for us.
Thank you.
We've got another question.
No.
Hello.
Hello.
So what was like the hardest part in training to space?
The hardest part of training? So that's a great question because there's lots of different things you need to do, and I'll let Samantha answer this. I'll say for me, it was learning Russian. Russian language is tough. I love languages. I've learned French and German and other languages, but Russian was tough.
For me, I'd say it was spacewalking training. We do that underwater, and we prepare to go outside by simulating that we can work weightlessly in the 3 dimensions by being underwater. And we have a wonderful suit that allows us to do that, but it doesn't come in my size, and not in yours too quite yet, not in yours either. And so it's, when you're a small person like me, it's a little bit more challenging because you have to deal with a suit that's a little bit bigger than it should be. And so that was definitely challenging, but it was also a lot of fun, and I enjoy it.
Good question. All right,
That's a good
now
question.
we've got a video now of you guys actually up in space. Should we check that out?
Yeah, let's do it. And then we'll do more questions after that.
Yep.
Okay.
She should be working. Sorry about that.
It's the long one. Okay, I think we're on right now. Real quick, Samantha and I started out as Expedition 42. We launched as a 3-person crew along with our Russian cosmonaut, Anton Shkaplerov. We met Butch Wilmore, Sasha Samokhutyaev, and Yelena Serova in space. And halfway through the mission, those 3 came back to Earth, and Scott Kelly, Misha Kornienko, and Gennady Padalka met us in space during Expedition 43. And this is how space station missions go. I'll talk about launch a little bit.
Yeah, this was our launch on the Soyuz spacecraft from Kazakhstan. A wonderful night launch, as you can see. And it was the 3 of us in this little cramped little spaceship, which is a tiny little piece on top of the rocket. The rest of the rocket is just fuel. It's basically the different stages, the different engine stages, and a lot of fuel. And once we've used it, they're just detached from the rest. And we keep on going until after 8 minutes, we finally get to space, and it's only us in our tiny little capsule. And as I said, it takes only 8 minutes to actually get to orbit. 8 minutes in which you are subjected to some acceleration. So basically you feel a lot of weight on your chest. It's like all of a sudden you weigh up to like 4.5 times your normal weight, and it's all kind of pressing on your chest. And then after 8 minutes, you get in weightlessness. So you move from that feeling of pressure on your chest to being floating and light. And after 6 hours, 4 times around the Earth, we went. And then finally, we got to our destination, which is the International Space Station, which you just saw. And this is just after the hatch opening. And it's our, you can see me coming through. And this is probably the happiest moment of my life when I got into the space station and I got to hug our colleagues who were already up there, Sasha, Yelena, and Butch. And here you can see Terry coming in. There we go.
The Soyuz vehicle that we launched in, there's a Soyuz right here in the Air and Space Museum in the next room over. It's docked with Apollo, and we just had the 40th anniversary of Apollo Soyuz, so you can see the size of the capsule. And the part that we live in is just the middle part. So when you look at that, it's not quite that big. We're just in the very small middle part. Science, as I mentioned, is a big part of what we do on the station. There's lots of different types of science that we do. Like I talked about, material science, combustion science, biology. We worked with some pharmaceutical companies on medicines. And this is very interesting. This is a minus 95 degrees Celsius freezer that we put a lot of our biology samples in. And you can see all the smoke coming out because it's so cold. We work really fast, yeah. We're very busy. We have to work fast in space.
Yeah, this is the microgravity science love box. So we do all kinds of things in there. Terry was actually our resident expert for this facility, but I did get a chance to work in it a little bit for the 3D printer. This was the first time we tested 3D printing, so additive manufacturing in space. And it's very exciting because it seems like it worked very well. We printed things that were printed identically on the ground, and then they compare them. And we even got a little wrench. It was the most complex object that we printed. And this is a little Italian facility called Cubic. It's a centrifuge and incubator, and it's used to do life science, so cell cultures and tissue cultures and stuff like that.
We talked about centrifuges before. This is a small centrifuge in the Japanese library where we're growing plants in weightlessness. And then for science, sometimes you need control groups. So they would compare what the plant was doing in 1G in the centrifuge with what it was doing in weightlessness. One of the most fun things that we did was deploy satellites. And there's an airlock, a small airlock in the Japanese module that you can put things in the airlock. The robotic arm comes in and takes it out. So you can go right from inside the space station to outside the space station. And this is a satellite that we deployed back in December called SpinSat. And there are several different types of satellites that we deployed. NanoRacks CubeSats is another one. This is a mission that Samantha did a lot of work on that was running right out of Goddard here, if any of you guys are familiar with Goddard Space
It's
Center.
a robotic refueling mission. So they were testing different technology for potentially one day refuel satellites robotically. So you can see this is the slide table that, this little airlock, we make a vacuum, we take away all the air, and then the slide table goes out, and then the robotic arm comes and grabs it. And this is the deployment actually of CubeSats. Those are really exciting. These are tiny little satellites. They're typically developed by universities, sometimes even high schools. So it's something that maybe you guys will be involved with one day. They're cheap, but they still have significant capabilities, and we launched them, among other things, on the space station. So this is, I'm doing some maintenance work on our bone densitometer. One of the research types we do up there is rodent research. And we actually get to do densitometry to check the bone density of rodents directly up there on the space station.
Spacewalking was a pretty important part of this mission. The space station was assembled over a period of almost a decade, but we're going through a period of reconfiguration, I call it right now, where we're getting it ready for future American capsules to show up and also for more cargo vehicles to show up. So we did 3 spacewalks. These are some of the tethers that we use to keep equipment from floating away. And Butch Wilmore and I went outside after Samantha was our inside person getting us suited up in the suits. And this is our first spacewalk going out the hatch for the first time. And that was quite an experience to get outside and see the Earth while you're just hanging on with your hands there out in space. It was pretty amazing. The spacewalks that we did was mostly laying cable. There's a lot of wiring and so on that had to go on in order to prepare the capsules to be able to dock. And so Butch and I put down about 400 feet of cable on the first 2 spacewalks. And you can see how big the space station is and how small we are out there. That gives you an idea of the size and scope of the space station. But we were running cables down that area to the front where the capsule will dock. And then on the third spacewalk, we laid a different set of about 400 feet of cables to some antennas and mirrors that the capsules can use as they come up and dock. This is a space selfie, except for it's not really a selfie. It was me upside down in Butch's visor taking a picture of him, but it looks like a selfie. It was one of our favorite pictures. You can see there's lots of equipment tethered to you, and as Samantha was talking about, it's just hard to do a spacewalk. It doesn't matter how big you are. Even for big guys, it's a lot of work. The suit weighs about 400 pounds, and it's pressurized, and you are really worn out after a training run in the pool or in space. And we had the opportunity to take out, actually it was a Russian GoPro camera, and this is some of the footage. This is a GoPro selfie, and it captures a little bit. And you can hear the sound. If you watch the video on YouTube, you can hear the sound of space, which is, here's Butch and I showing off our Air Force and Navy colors there. We put it on our checklist.
Yeah, and the other thing about the space station, of course, is that it's this outpost out there, and we can't like go to the supermarket and shop for food when we need it, or go to the shop and buy repair parts. So we have to rely on home delivery from planet Earth, and these home deliveries come up with vehicles that are different ones. We have a Russian vehicle called Progress, and during our stay twice we received a U.S. Dragon vehicle that is the one that you saw in the pictures. And what we do, it comes up and it starts to fly formation with the space station, and then we go and grab it with a robotic arm and we attach it to the space station. And then we have 5 to 6 crazy weeks of science and cargo ops until we are ready to, at the end of this period, sign it on its way. Like you can see here, this was one of our Dragons departing and going home. And this is the Russian cargo vehicle that I mentioned, the Progress. We successfully had one dock during our mission. See, that's real time. It comes in hard. And one unfortunately didn't make it, so that was lost. That was towards the end of our mission. And this is the European vehicle. That's the ATV, and it's the very last ATV 5 departing, and it's a really cool shot. You can see it like spitting fire, and that's how it holds altitude as it goes away. And this is another really cool shot. The little plume you see up there is the ATV-5 burning up in the atmosphere.
A big part of what we do in space is not only science, but it's a 1 million-pound vehicle and it needs to be maintained. And so we spent quite a bit of effort repairing equipment and keeping things running. This is the bathroom right here. This is the American technique of how to saw off a piece of metal that we had to do. Our Russian colleague saw Samantha and I struggling with this thing, and he ran down and got a power saw and came back, and after he came back it took about 20 seconds and the piece was sawed off. A fun thing about working in space, if you ever do work on your car, you can just get on the wall and put yourself in the right attitude or put yourself upside down, and it's not a problem at all to get into the hard to reach places. Here Scott, Kelly, and I are working on some more of the life support equipment. One of the most fun things that we did was film an IMAX movie that's coming out in the spring. But there's the IMAX camera. Much easier to handle in space than it is on Earth. That thing probably weighs 20 or 30 pounds on the ground. And we were up there for so long, we celebrated a lot of holidays. This is Christmas. We had Christmas morning in space and presents and stockings. And we had Thanksgiving. This is Samantha's birthday. We had some little candles and a lemon curd cake and a green pouch there for her.
Yeah, that was my 16th birthday.
Yeah, 16th birthday. Talk about water balls. Water is pretty amazing in space to see how it behaves.
And this is the world famous espresso machine. And you can see it basically works with pouches. You have to attach a water pouch, and then the coffee comes out on the other side. And as I say, it wasn't bad at all.
I mentioned before we don't have bread in space, but we do have tortillas. And so a lot of astronauts like to put whatever they have. This is Scott showing some fish on a tortilla. But it's a way to spice up the food. Spice is very important to our crewmate Butch. He used mustard on, I think, everything, and he really enjoyed that. This is me making a hamburger here. Ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, a bag of cheese and a rehydrated beef patty, and it was pretty good. Not quite Earth hamburger, but it was pretty good. And it was fun to do that every once in a while. I didn't eat this every meal, but occasionally it was okay.
And this is an example of the challenges you face in zero-G, right? If you have to move, in this case, MMMs from one Ziploc to another on the ground, you just flip one upside down and you're done, right? But in space, it doesn't work that way. And so one get around is to centrifuge. And it takes a little bit of skill. I mean, that was towards the end of the mission, but you can, to spin around and you can make them go out of one Ziploc and into the next one.
I prefer to move the M&Ms from the Ziploc to my mouth usually. But,
Yeah.
After we eat all this food, we have to go weigh ourselves, and this is how you weigh yourself in space. It's basically a spring, and it measures how long it takes you to go up and down on the spring, and based on your mass is how long that spring takes. And then when you realize you gain too much weight, you get on the treadmill, and it's on the wall, and here's the exercise machine I was talking about earlier. Exercise is a big part of it, and they schedule us usually for 2.5 hours a day. Occasionally the station has to maneuver itself. If there's debris in space that we have to avoid, it will climb or descend, and this is what it's like to be on board the space station when the rocket engines are firing. As you can see, it doesn't move that fast. It's a 1,000,000-pound vehicle, and it's a very slow climb. Another part of being a human is you have to get your hair cut, and I'll tell you, I'm a combat pilot, and I've done spacewalks and launched on the Space Shuttle. The most stressful thing by far that I've done in space is this right here. Giving Samantha a haircut in space was a big deal. We had to train for it here on Earth. The pressure was on. I would have had the wrath of every Italian woman on Earth had I messed that up. So that was a very stressful moment.
You did great.
The final product. We ended up getting extended by a month. Samantha mentioned several vehicles did not make it in the last year, but when one of the Russian vehicles did not make it to space station, they ended up extending us a month. And during that time, we got to move this module from the bottom of the station to the side, and this is a time lapse. It looks like it's moving very fast, but this actually takes about 2 orbits, so it's about a 3-hour-long process to move this big, probably 10 or 15,000 pound module from one part of the station to the other. And while we were in space, Mr. Leonard Nimoy passed away, and we paid a tribute to him, Spock. Returning to Earth.
Yeah, so after 200 days, they said that we really had to come home. There was no way to stay longer. And so this is us saying goodbye to our friends who are staying behind, Gennady, Scott, and Misha. 2 of them, by the way, are still up there on the space station. They're staying for a whole year. And this is our Soyuz departing. So that was it. It's time to go home. A few hours of not much happening until we went around the world a couple of times, waiting for the right moment for the engines to burn so that we would actually get back to Kazakhstan and not to some unknown place on the planet. And in Kazakhstan, that's of course where they were waiting for us. And then a pretty wild ride towards the end. I mean, you can see this was the view out of our window. At some point, for a few minutes, we were going through plasma. So basically, we were in a ball of fire, slowing down before eventually the parachute opened, which is a pretty violent shock when the parachute opens, and then you're like, shaken for a minute or so, and then eventually you hit the ground like that. And that's a pretty cool shot. That's just a fraction of a second before you hit the ground. The retro rockets fire to dampen that impact. And then after about 10-15 minutes, the guys and girls out there, they're ready to take you out, and they help you out of the capsules one by one. You're a little bit dizzy at the beginning. You also feel like you're 500 tons all of a sudden. Because of course, we had been weightless for so long that our brain was just not used to handle weight at all. And so we took it easy in those chairs for a little while, and then they put us on a helicopter first to the Karaganda airport, and then on a plane back to Houston. And as soon as we landed in Houston, the scientists got hold of us, and they started taking blood and taking urine and make us do tests and all kinds of stuff.
And they haven't stopped.
They haven't stopped quite yet.
One of the best things to do in space is to look back on Earth, and there's just an endless stream of amazing views that we have. This is in the Middle East, in the Persian Gulf, the Palm Islands. These rivers in Indonesia are amazing to see. The Bahamas is definitely on my to-do list now. A lot of shallow, beautiful green, blue waters around Earth, but the Bahamas, Caribbean, and Florida, that area really stands out. It's unique. We had a chance to see a lot of tropical storms and hurricanes and cyclones. This one here in particular, MISAC, was unbelievable. The eye was so big. I've certainly never seen anything like that before. This is the cupola module where we do most of our looking out, and it's just incredible. It's a cool reflection there. Night times are amazing, especially over Africa and Indonesia and South America, where the lightning storms are just spectacular. View of the Middle East going from the Mediterranean over the Arabian Peninsula. A lot of beautiful places on Earth, and Samantha mentioned this earlier today, that you get used to seeing Earth by colors, and you kind of know countries by what they look like from space now. You know, countries that I really had no idea about before, now I know what they look like. This is an example of some African thunderstorms, and the southern lights, Aurora Australis, is it's kind of unreal. I mean, it really, and you can see the aurora dancing around. This is moon glint on the Gulf of Mexico. Here's a fisheye view through the cupola. It's hard to say what my favorite picture is, but I think this was my favorite. Early in the mission, seeing the Northern Lights. That was the UK. This is Scandinavia, Norway and Sweden and Denmark and Finland. And then we move on past St. Petersburg on to Moscow. You can see St. Petersburg there. Moscow really stands out at night. It's this bright star in the middle right there. And at nighttime, and during the day you see a very thin blue atmosphere. At nighttime you see this upper portion of our atmosphere that goes up maybe 100 kilometers or more, and that brown haze color is real. At nighttime you see that with your eye, and it's amazing. Here's the Nile River into Cairo and Alexandria, and you can see Israel's a really small, couple bright lights there, and a lot of the Middle East. Baghdad's off to the right. Yeah, New Zealand on one of the very few days. Here's Samantha's favorite.
It's Italy.
Yeah.
Down the blue is Rome, Naples, down towards the south, Calabria, Puglia, hint of Sicily over to the left.
This is a neat starscape. The time lapse makes it move really fast. Of course, when you're flying, it's not moving quite that fast. But you can see one of the Magellanic Clouds. They're really small galaxies near our galaxy, and then the main Milky Way here. But if you turn all the lights off inside, you can actually see this with your eyes, and it's spectacular. So that's 200 days and 20 minutes.
All right, we're going to take some more questions, but first we've got an online question we're going to start with. Have you had the opportunity to follow up on science experiments conducted by you on the space station?
Some of it, yeah. I've been in contact a lot with the Italian principal investigators for my mission to space, because it was a ticket, let's say, of the Italian Space Agency. Then the Italian Space Agency also selected a number of experiments that were really tied to this mission. A lot of other experiments, you know, they start earlier, you just keep on going, and so maybe you don't have that strong relationship with the scientists. Plus I was involved from the very beginning since the selection. In some cases I helped out, figure out a few details of the protocol we would do. And so I've definitely talked to them. And of course they caution and tell you that, you know, you have to be patient with science. I mean, some of them just got their samples back, some of them got data, but to do a proper analysis of the data requires time. But what I can say, and I'm really happy about that, is that we were successful in the sense that they all got the data that they wanted, they all got the samples back that they wanted, so we were very successful operationally. And then I'm curious myself to see maybe in a year time or so when they're ready with their analysis and they maybe publish something, I'm very curious to see what come out.
Awesome. All right, we've got another audience question.
So when y'all have emergencies, like, what do y'all do? How do y'all help y'all emergency?
Right, that's a great question because we had lots and lots of emergency alarms go off. I started a scoreboard on the space station. We would make a tick mark every day, a warning or caution would go off. Luckily and thankfully, most of them are false alarms, and it just gave us some practice. But the big emergencies that we train for are fires and depressurizations, and also we call it an ammonia leak or toxic atmosphere. Ammonia is a very dangerous chemical, and it's the coolant that we use on the outside of the station. So if that leaked inside, that would be a bad day. So we spend a lot of time training before we launch for those emergencies. Good question.
Fire behaves a lot differently in space, right?
It does. The good news is it burns itself out because there's no convection. So unless you have a fan to move the air around, if there's a fire, it should burn and then be gone shortly. So we haven't really had any problems with fires, thankfully, so far on the space station. And the first thing that the vehicle does as an automatic response, if there's a fire, it turns off all the fans. So in theory, all the airflow should be gone, and whatever caught on fire should put itself out very quickly.
Awesome. All right, we've got another audience question.
Hi, my name is Daewon, and my question is, what courses do you have to take in college to become an astronaut?
Well, that is a really good question. I'll answer it real quickly. To be a NASA astronaut, there's not one set of things that you have to do. My path was to be a pilot, so I went to the Air Force Academy, and I was a math major. All astronauts have some type of technical math or science or engineering degree, but other astronauts were engineers before they became astronauts. Some were medical doctors or pilots, like I said. But as long as you have some type of technical degree, there's lots of different paths to be an astronaut. Good luck.
All right, we've got an online question. Being an astronaut, is it more challenging on the physiological side or the physical side, psychological side?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think there's different aspects. Yeah, I'm not sure that there is a psychological challenge that stands out as opposed to a physical challenge that stands out. The thing about being an astronaut, I think that's the biggest challenge, and that's how we kind of select people to make sure that they can face this challenge, is that you have to learn a lot of different things and be able to switch gears from one thing to the next real quick. So we don't really look for people who are really super high achievers in one field. We're not really looking for like the Nobel laureate scientist or the Olympic athlete or we really look for people who are not that bad in anything.
Right.
So, you need to be able to learn languages, to fly a space vehicle, to practice underwater, and that's definitely physically challenged. To somehow perform little medical procedures on your colleagues, to talk to people. I hope you enjoy us talking, but I mean, you might think, oh my God, you guys are so bad at it. Hopefully not. I guess that's really the challenge, to be able to learn many things quickly.
All right, we've got an audience question.
My question is, how long do it take for you to get out of space?
How long does it take to get to outer space?
Right. To get to outer space, that launch that we did took 8.5 minutes, and then the engine shut down and we were floating in space for 200 days. To get back from space, it takes closer to maybe 30 or 40 minutes. Your spaceship is undocked from the station. It turns around backwards and fires the engine, so instead of accelerating and climbing, it decelerates and slows down, and then you start coming down. And that's a slower process. If you came back in 8 minutes, the forces would be so strong, the capsule would melt and we'd be squashed into little pancakes. So we come back a little bit slower, which I'm really happy about because we don't end up as pancakes. And so coming back takes about 30 or 40 minutes.
We've got an online question next. Does the caffeine in coffee have a different effect on your body in space?
Maybe. I don't think that has been studied. So just from our perception, I guess probably not. But it's really hard to say. I mean, I don't know how much caffeine was in the coffee we drank, and I didn't really monitor it specifically. So I guess the answer is I don't know.
All right, we've got an audience question.
Hi, my name is Courtney, and what was the hardest thing about being in outer space?
The hardest thing about being in outer space.
Hi, Courtney. It may be when you're there for 200, when I was there on a space shuttle mission, it was such a quick mission, it was the work, and it really was tiring. For 200 days, it's probably just missing home a little bit, missing your friends and family, and things like that. Luckily, we had a contact with people on Earth, so we were able to stay in touch with them. And when you're flying in space, you treat it as such a unique and great opportunity, and you know you have the rest of your life to be on Earth, so you try and enjoy it as much as you can. So it wasn't too bad, but you miss home.
We've got another audience question.
I wonder, do your muscles ever get numb, like when you're out of space?
Muscles hurt and have
Yeah.
problems, yeah? You want to talk about that?
It's very individual. Some people have a little bit of back pain at the beginning as your spine kind of elongates, and so you might have a little bit of muscle pain in your back as your muscles kind of adapt and stretch. I personally didn't have that. You might just injure yourself while you work out, and that's kind of like the same as happens occasionally on Earth, and that actually happened to me. So for a few days I couldn't work out because I had injured a muscle. That's very similar to what happens on the ground. My muscles really hurt when I came back. I mean, my calves just from walking, because you haven't walked for 200 days, and all of a sudden, guess what? You have to walk. And that was really hard. So I had a really, really sore muscles for several days after I came back, and that was just purely from walking.
Did it take a long time to adjust to being back on Earth?
Yeah, everybody's different. There's some guys that it's months later, they're still having adjustment issues. And I personally, I really lucked out. The first day I was really dizzy, but very quickly, the first day I was at the gym for an hour and a half, and for me personally, the adjustment happened a lot faster than I thought it would. I was kind of surprised.
All right. We've got another audience question.
Excuse me, what college did you go to?
What colleges did you go to?
You got to say colleges for in Samantha's case. I went to the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. It's like the Naval Academy here in Annapolis. It's a little bit better, but it's like. But Samantha went to a lot of colleges, so I'll let her talk about that.
Yeah, well, I'm European, of course, so I went to the University of Munich, and then as part of my studies there, I also studied a little bit in Toulouse, France, and a little bit in Moscow. And after that, I joined the Italian Air Force, and so I studied again in the Italian Air Force Academy.
Another audience question?
Excuse me, what was your favorite activity to do in space?
Favorite activity in space?
Well, for me, I'll say taking pictures. I love taking pictures of inside, of outside of the Earth, of stars. I just like taking pictures and video of anything.
Yeah, I enjoy taking pictures too, but really I liked the variety of the work you do up there. I mean, I'm somebody who, and that's not a good thing, but I can get bored pretty easily. And so the fact that up there we could do such a big variety of things, one moment you're doing a science experiment, and then a different one, and then you're doing maintenance, and you're really doing something hands-on, and then you're, maybe talking to students on the ground, and it's a big variety of things. And so it just kept me interested and in a way entertained, although it was a lot of work really that we were doing.
We've got an online question next. For Terry, how is a space shuttle mission different from a Soyuz mission?
So the space shuttle mission lasted about 2 weeks, and it was very scripted. I knew every day what I was doing well in advance. I knew they had in 5-minute blocks. Every minute of your time was scripted, and it was frankly exhausting. When I got back, I slept for 13 and a half hours uninterrupted, which was I hadn't done since I was probably 1 year old. The Soyuz mission, if you talk about just getting there and back, is very different because it's really cramped and small, and we got to the station very quickly in only 6 hours. The shuttle took 2 days to get there, and coming back landing in a capsule was kind of like driving your car through your neighborhood and running into a telephone pole. Was the Soyuz landing, whereas a shuttle landed like an airplane. So the Soyuz and shuttle were different in that way. But the bigger difference was the Soyuz mission was in conjunction with the station mission, so it was 200 days. And so it was really moving to space rather than just going on vacation to space.
Awesome. All right, we've got an audience question.
I don't really have a question, but I just want to say thank you both so much for all the work that you've done and all the social media engagement that you guys both do. I follow you both on Twitter, and I think it's just a really great thing that you come out to things like this, and it's inspiring. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
When you came back from space, like, could you walk?
Could you walk?
Well, I think we took our first steps. So what happened is, like, you saw in the movie, they kind of take you in these chairs, and then we probably spent about half an hour in the chair, and then about probably half an hour more in like a field tent that they built. It's like a little medical tent, probably half an hour more. So I guess between an hour and a half after landing, we took our first steps. And I guess I could walk, but I had people on both sides of me, like making sure that I wouldn't fall over, and it really felt weird. It felt like my body was like this giant rock weighing 100 tons, and I was trying to balance this rock on tiny little toothpicks that felt like my legs.
All right, audience question.
Hi, I have two questions. First of all, was it disappointing when you are expecting a resupply ship to come and it doesn't come? Like, are you very disappointed by that, or you just say, oh well, no big deal?
Well, of course it was disappointing. There's equipment and science experiments, but Samantha and I lucked out because our personal items, we don't take much personal items, there's a small thing, but our personal items were not on there. That would have really been disappointing had we, little jewelry and things we'd had for our families. So we lucked out in that everything that was on there was replaceable from our personal point of view. The bigger issue, when the Russian vehicle didn't make it, it was a similar rocket to what we the Soyuz humans launch on. And so they had to take some time to make sure they were ready for the next human launch, and therefore there was some uncertainty if we were going to stay in space for longer or not. So we had a period of uncertainty. Are we staying in space or are we going back to Earth? And it wasn't so much disappointing as it was unknown, and we didn't know what the schedule was going to be. We couldn't make summer plans yet because we didn't know if we were going to be in space or not.
My last question, I was just wondering, how hard is it to get used to sleeping in a bag on the wall? Like,
there's not really on the wall. It's once you close your eyes, you're floating. You have no idea where you're at. And I didn't I didn't Velcro or bungee myself to the wall. I just floated in my cabin, which was wonderful. I think Samantha too talks about how she just fell asleep instantly. And yeah.
All right, we've got an online question next. Has there been any confirmation as to the length of the ISS mission? Will it continue beyond 2020?
That's a great question, and we're really planning on and looking forward to extending it through at least 2024, hopefully longer. It's an international effort, and a lot of the international governments still have to decide that for sure, but it looks very positive that it'll go through at least 2024.
Got an audience question?
Yeah, so were you guys able to see solar and lunar eclipses from space, and what were they like seeing them from the ISS? What were the eclipses like? Were you able to see them?
Oh, the solar.
There was
solar
one,
eclipse.
yeah.
We worked there for one, and unfortunately, we don't really have any equipment on the space station to observe safely a solar eclipse. So what we did see was the shadow. That was kind of cool, actually. we actually could see the shadow that the moon was casting on the Earth's surface. I think I took a picture. It's online somewhere. And
it's in the Atlantic.
And then when it was over the Northern Atlantic. And then when the sun set, we actually saw a sunset when the sun was partially covered, and that's where the point where you can actually safely watch, and that was kind of cool to see. You could see a little bit of it missing. But I took pictures, but I took pictures like blind because I couldn't really watch.
Well, awesome. Thank you guys so much for talking with us today. We'd like to thank Boeing for sponsoring the What's New in Aerospace. We're getting ready to wrap this up. If you're on Twitter, you can go to the Air and Space Twitter feed. We're getting ready to do a Periscope interview with Terry here in just a few minutes afterwards, so be sure to tune into that with the link that we're going to send out on Twitter. Thank you for watching.